Today we're going to be talking about the American Revolution. I think that students feel a little more comfortable with this topic because they've heard of George Washington, the Boston Tea Party, Declaration of Independence, July 4th. So the thesis is going to be you can kill their soldiers but the people you didn't convince. And we'll be talking about this more at the end of the second lecture on the American Revolution. So an overall question I'm going to be asking you at the end that I want you to start thinking about is this one, number 5. In one sentence each, please describe 3 moments during this lecture which describe how economics led to the American Revolution. Please note the times from the video for your references. So we're going to be beginning with the growing rift, or mercantilism. Mercantilism was the economic theory during the time, and please take a couple notes because I'm going to be asking you another question about this. But anyways, what the belief was is that if you're a country like England, you should have many colonies like us. Remember, America, United States, was not a country yet. We're just a colony. Colonies are supposed to be providing raw resources to big countries. It's important for countries to be self-sufficient and to export more than they import. So again, that would be the emphasis on England. If you could write down the Navigation Acts of 1760, the Navigation Acts of 1760, what they said is that as Americans, if we want something from Germany, France, Spain, we must go through England. So England's going to have total control that way. So this is a picture of the different colonies. As you can see, the British, Dutch, French, Portuguese, Spanish all have colonies. And again, our whole purpose is to provide raw resources. So we have wheat, corn, tobacco, rice, indigo, fishing, cotton, etc. This is the triangular trade. So you can see the manufactured goods are coming from England. We were not encouraged to have factories. We're not going to have factories till like the 1830s. And you can see the raw resources leaving our country. And then if you look down at the bottom, you can see what's called the Middle Passage. So we'll talk about that with the slavery lecture. But that's slaves coming from Africa going to the New World. So part of the growing rift is the French-Indian Wars, and a lot of teachers will do several weeks on this. I'm just going to do one sentence, okay? So the French-Indian Wars is a war that England and France fought, and England basically got rid of France on our continent, but they made the Americans pay. So that's going to start leading to all of our taxes. So again, French-Indian Wars, I'm going to take a note. It's when England got rid of France on our continent and made us pay. So if you remember that earlier picture of France having Louisiana purchase, Louisiana area, now they are gone. You see that, right? Okay, they're just up. Yeah, they're nowhere to be seen. Okay. All right, so let's talk about attitudes too. So we are no longer, as Americans, no longer like the Puritans. We love our stuff. This is stuff that belongs to a family called the William Byrd family, B-Y-R-D. Here are some women that are very dressed up with the bustles, with the latest fashion. Here's some cloth, again, that we inherit from or get from England. These are actually men's shoes. So just like boys today, like my son, collect tennis shoes worth hundreds of dollars, these are all men's shoes. These are men's jackets. This is a man who wants his legs to look good. So we're getting a little vain. The men are wearing breeches, so they would show their calves, and he's got fake calf pads, some for winter, some for summer. Okay, another thing about attitudes is we just want to be respected by England. But a couple of stories. One is that George Washington, I'm sure you recognize him. He's not president at the time, but he is very wealthy. Martha Washington is extremely wealthy, his wife. Anyways, George Washington writes a tailor in England and asks for a suit. The tailor goes down to the local thrift store and sends George Washington a used, out-of-fashion, expensive suit. So charges him a lot. So very little respect, which is going to be a big part of why we get into the American Revolution. Seems silly, but that's part of the deal. And then another story is about Benjamin Franklin, who never was our president, but is very important American, and very respected here. When he goes to England, he is treated like the 10th son of a candle maker, which he was, and the grandson of an indentured servant. So we were not respected, but that's all we wanted is respect. So kind of keep track of that thesis or that theme. So in order to pay back for the French Indian War and to earn some money, England enacts the Stamp Act, and everybody is required to buy these stamps. So if you're a gambler, you need to buy stamps for your playing cards. If you're a lawyer, you need to buy stamps for your law firm, for all your legal papers. So the first question is going to be, did the British have the right to tax the colonists without representation? So you could take the British side or the American side, and then think, what were the fears of the colonists? Who did we feel like we were being treated like? And then please consider mercantilism in your answer. It cannot be from the internet. It needs to be something that I said in lecture, please. So I like to show this picture as something that completely represents the American Revolution and what happens before. So take a look at the extreme right. You'll see a woman, and next to her to the left is an African American boy. Next to him, a couple people down, is a working class man. So these were the people that were fighting the American Revolution that we're going to be focusing on, not just rich people fighting rich people. So this is a threat saying the first man that either distributes or makes use of stamps, paper, let him take care of his house, person, and effects, the voice of the people. So these people are rising up, and that's actually what they're doing here. They're fighting against the Stamp Act. They're having a gathering. But they're saying, this message is saying, if you buy stamps, we will get you. And then here they're taking what's called an effigy, and you might see that word in the OpenStax question if you're doing OpenStax. Never mind if you're El Camino, sorry. Okay. Okay, so they take a stamp master who's not a real person. It's like a scarecrow. And we're, basically saying we're against the Stamp Act. This is a book of the stamps. And as you can tell, not many people were buying them, right? And so that's when we get into the growing rift. We get to the Declaratory Act. And what I want you to imagine is, I'm not sure how old you guys are, but imagine you're back being, 13, and your curfew is at midnight, and you come in at 2, and your parents say, go ahead, go upstairs. We'll talk about this later. Is the trouble over? No, absolutely not. So that is what's going on with the Declaratory Act. They said, yes, we'll stop the Stamp Act, but now we're going to do the Declaratory Act. So we listened to you, but not really. So if you could write this down, the Declaratory Act, I'll say it a couple times, is Parliament can tax and legislate for Britain's American possessions in all cases whatsoever. So Declaratory Act is Parliament can tax and legislate for Britain's American possessions in all cases whatsoever. Okay, so they slammed us, and that's the Townsend duties. And you don't have to write all this down, but basically they started taxing us on glass, lead, paints, paper, and you recognize tea. So the second question is going to be, what is involved in a boycott? And I do hope you won't look on the internet for this, because that answer is not super helpful. But think about when you boycott something, what are you doing? Unless you really don't know, then look it up. But who has to be involved in the colonies in order for a boycott to be successful? Who buys stuff, right? It's not just rich people, right? Who buys stuff? Okay, so now we get to the Boston Massacre. And what happened is there was a young boy, it's actually one of your primary sources, who did a haircut for a British officer. The British officer did not pay him, did not pay the boy. So there was a crowd that gathered, and the crowd, Americans, started throwing snowballs and rocks and sticks and stuff at the soldiers. The soldiers British soldiers tried to shoot over the heads, but people were killed, and 9 were wounded and 5 were killed. So this is a picture. Does this describe what I just said? Probably not. It's a little bit exaggerated, right? This is a picture by Paul Revere. It's called Propaganda, right? So if you don't know how to read and you see this picture, it looks like, it's a massacre, right? It's a massacre. This is actually one of our first, this was our first martyr. Crispus Attucks, as you can see, is African American. Which of course sadly we don't talk about in school, and we should. Crispus Attucks was our first martyr. So then we're going to get the Boston Tea Party, and as you know, a lot of patriots took the tea and dumped it in the harbor. You can go visit the harbor. I have. It's pretty interesting. and we, for some crazy reason, dressed as natives. I don't know why. There was one man that stuffed some tea in his pants, and the rest of the patriots took all his clothes off and sent him home. So they did that. We're going to talk about mobs and stuff when we get to Jacksonian era. But he wasn't going by what their motive was, right? So I don't know if you remember some of the pictures of this kind of thing, but the whole devil butt thing, whatever. But this guy is being tarred and feathered because he was collecting tea taxes. Okay, so now we're going to talk about something else really important that happened, and I think to me it's a real turning point. I'm going to ask you a question about it later, so make sure you take some notes. But what happened is Benjamin Franklin did not like the governor, Thomas Hutchinson, at all. So he first off, we have this poem, so we're going to see what is the attitude of Benjamin Franklin and of the Americans towards the English. So we have an old mother who so peevish is grown, she stumps us like children that scarce walk alone. She forgets that we're grown with sense of our own. If we don't obey orders, whatever the case, she frowns and she chides and loses patience. And sometimes she hits us a slap in our faces. Her orders are so that we often suspect that age has impaired her of sound intellect. But still an old mother should have due respect. So if we were in a class together, I'd ask you what's the relationship, and that we feel that the English are treating us like a mother, but we would like more respect. So again, Benjamin Franklin is concerned about this rising tension. He does not like Thomas Hutchinson. Thomas Hutchinson is also pretty worried about all the rising tension. So Thomas Hutchinson, who's our governor of Massachusetts, but very pro-English and, kind of a wimpy guy, to be honest, didn't really stand up to the English at all. Hope that's not offensive to anybody, but anyways, he requests 10,000 soldiers to be sent from England. So what happens is Benjamin Franklin invented the post office. So Benjamin Franklin is in England. He opens Thomas Hutchinson's letter and sends the letter back to the patriots in America and says, please don't publish this, meaning, of course, publish this. Okay, so then what happens is Parliament calls Benjamin Franklin and says that you are no gentleman to open somebody else's mail, and they humiliated him. He was in his best outfit. He wanted to impress the English, and they humiliated him. So he said, I will make your king a little man for this, and I suppose I am too much of an American. So that was the turning point for Benjamin Franklin. So please, number 3, describe the issue between Benjamin Franklin, Thomas Hutchinson, and Parliament. How did British arrogance lead to the standoff with Benjamin Franklin and Parliament? Okay, so a couple more points is the coercive or intolerable acts, and this is when England sends all of these soldiers, these 10,000 soldiers, and we as Americans need to house them. So we have to feed them. They are sleeping on your bed, you are sleeping on the couch, and it is not very happy. So as Americans, we like to say that we were treated like slaves, even though the real slaves are saying, no, you've got to be kidding, not at all. But we like to, compare ourselves to that. So here we are, supposedly in a cage. Here we are being disrespected. So think of what's being poured down America's throat as tea, and the gentleman at the end looking up her skirt. So then we get the First Continental Congress, and this is when we are trying to decide if we will support Boston for their Tea Party. And please remember, nobody has ever really left their colony. Nobody's really traveled that far, but we've got to come together, all these 13 colonies. So if you, again, were in my class, I have these fake dollars, and they're not real because otherwise I'd be a zillionaire, but every single colony had separate money. So every colony would be like 13 countries in Africa, 13 countries in South America. So we have to all come together, 13 different, completely different entities, right? And decide, are we going to support Boston? And we decide we will. So that's the First Continental Congress. So I'd like for you to answer this question too. Take a look at Patrick Henry, Give Me Liberty or Give Me Death. I would like a quote from there, not just the title, and say, how would you personally respond if you heard this speech? Please keep in mind, this is, again, a question you might, we'll talk about later, but 1/3 of Americans were for the war, 1/3 were against it, and 1/3 were neutral. Okay, so just to let you know. So go ahead and respond to that. That could be your choice, however you want to respond. And then this again is that overall question. In one sentence each, please describe 3 moments during this lecture which describe how economics led to the American Revolution. Please note the times from the video for your references. Okay, and again at the end of the next video we will talk about you can kill their soldiers but the people you didn't convince. Okay, thank you very much.